Hey everyone, in today's lesson we are going to talk about plotting reflections on a coordinate plane. Okay, so I'll be talking a little bit just in case your notes aren't out, but it is an expectation for your notes to be all filled out by the end of this Edpuzzle. I will be checking your notes on the next day just to make sure all of your notes are filled out. So treat this as a normal lecture where I'm teaching up in the front as you normally would, be writing everything that I'm writing down. The neat thing about the Edpuzzle is you are able to pause the Edpuzzle at any point during this lesson, just in case if I'm going too quickly or if you need some time to rewatch a certain part because you didn't quite understand it. That's the nice part about this Edpuzzle. So feel free to pause it as however many times you would like to. Work at this on your own pace. And that's what we'll do. So make sure you are watching on Edpuzzle, not on YouTube, because there are questions that you will have to answer throughout this video. If you are not answering any questions, if you don't see any questions, that means we are not using the correct platform. So make sure you'll see questions pop up every now and then. If that's the case, you are doing great. Okay, so today we are going to talk about reflections. What is a reflection? A reflection is a flip, right? This is a transformation in which a figure is reflected in a line called the line of reflection. Okay, a reflection creates a mirror image of the original figure. Remember, the first type of transformation we talked about in lesson 2.2 was a translation, and how we refer to the translation was the word slide. Reflection, the keyword is going to be flip. Okay, here's what the line of reflection is. The line of reflection is where the original figure flips over and creates the image on the other side. So here's example 1. Tell whether the blue figure is a reflection of the red figure. So remember, we're seeing if the blue figure is the image, right? Image is another way of saying the final product. So I'm going from red to blue. Does it flip over the line of reflection? In this case is yes. It flips. Okay. All right. Letter B. I'm going from red to blue, right? Does it flip over? No, it doesn't. It actually slides, right? So this is actually not a reflection. It is a translation. Okay, so with that in mind, why don't you do 1, 2, and 3? I don't think it'll take you too long, but why don't you work on 1, 2, and 3 on your own, and then check your answers with the answers on Edpuzzle. All right, moving on. Here's actually how you solve reflections, okay? So here is reflection in a coordinate plane. To reflect a figure, you'll see a lot of typos in this. I think I was rushing through creating these note packets. To reflect the figure in the x-axis, okay, take the opposite of the y-coordinate. So if I want to reflect across x-axis, I'm going to do opposite of y. Same thing. On the other hand, well, not same thing. In the other hand, if I want to reflect across the y-axis, I'm going to do the opposite of the x-coordinate. So if I want to reflect across y-axis, you take the opposite of your x. So those are the key things on how to solve all of this. Okay, so in algebra, here's how I do it. If I have x comma y, right, and I want to reflect across the x-axis, I will take x comma negative y. So you're just going to add a negative sign in front of your y value if I'm reflecting across the x-axis. On the other hand, if I'm reflecting across the y-axis, I'm going to take the negative x value and my y value stays exactly the same. Okay, so I would try to think about the opposite if for reflections, right? So I think it's easy for us to be like, oh, x-axis opposite of x, but it's your x-axis is opposite of y-axis opposite of x. In a reflection, the original figure and its image are congruent. So example number 2, the vertices of a triangle are A, B, and C. Draw the figure, right? So I need to plot the figure first and its reflection in the x-axis. X-axis means, right, opposite of y. So that's what I would identify first. Okay, so let's take a look. Let me plot my original figure first. Oops, sorry for if I'm zooming in. -1, 1. Here is A. B is -1, 3. Here is B. And C is 5, 3 right here. So we should all be able to plot this original figure first. That's step number 1. Is step 1, draw figure. All right, here's what I would actually do for step number 2. Step number 2, I would actually find the opposite of coordinate. Or, excuse me, let me erase that. I would actually find the opposite. Right, so remember, I'm finding the opposite of all of my y coordinates. So if A is -1, 1, A prime is going to be, remember, I'm finding the opposite of my y coordinate is going to be, my x coordinate stays the same. So it's instead of +1, it's going to be -1. Right, all you're doing is finding the opposite of your y coordinate. It's always x, y. Same thing with B. My B is -1, 3. This is going to turn into B prime. Remember, my original y coordinate is +3, so my opposite is going to be -1, -3. Your x coordinate stays exactly the same. C is 5, 3. Right, so what do you think? This will turn into C prime would be 5, -3. So I would always write out these coordinates second. After you draw your original figure, I would find the new coordinates by finding the opposite. Step 3 is plot these new points. Okay, these new points are right here. Okay, I'm going to plot them in orange, so make sure you plot them as well. So once you find the opposites of all your points, plot the new image. So -1, -1 would be right here. I will label this as A prime. B prime is going to be -1, -3. And C prime is going to be 5, -3. And then if you draw the image, does this look like a reflection across the x-axis? Right, the x-axis is this middle line right there, and it does look like a reflection. Okay? So take your time. If you didn't understand what I just did, feel free to pause this video and rewatch just this portion of it. I would really rewatch it until you feel like you have a really good understanding of how to make reflections in a coordinate plane. Okay? So same thing with this one, example number 3, the vertices of a quadrilateral are following PQRS. Draw the figure and its reflection in the y-axis. So step 1, right? Let me go back to my purple. Step 1, draw figure. So -2, 5 is right here, so that's P. Q is -1, -1 right here. Here's Q. R is -4, 2. Here's R, and S is -4, 4. I think I did that correctly. Right, so here is my quadrilateral. So I know it looks ugly or it looks weird, but that's it. That's step number 1. Step number 2 is find the opposite. Right, so in this case, I am reflecting across the y-axis. My first one, it was the x-axis. This one's the y-axis. So I'm going to find opposite of all my x values. right? Always be careful on what I'm doing reflection across. Is it my y or is it my x? So in this case, I would do exactly what I did in my previous example, p negative 2 comma 5, right? This would become, remember, I'm only finding the opposite of my x. So if it's a negative 2, it would become a positive 2 comma 5. Let's find q, it would be negative 1 comma negative 1. Q prime would be 1 comma negative 1. R, you start at negative 4 comma 2. This would become r prime of 4 comma 2. If you're confused or if I'm going too quickly, remember all I'm doing is I'm finding the opposite of my x values. Why? Because I'm reflecting across the y-axis. Remember, think about opposites. If I'm reflecting across y-axis, opposite of x. If I'm reflecting across x-axis, opposite of y. And then last but not least, s is negative 4 comma 4. This s prime would be 4 comma 4, positive 4 comma 4. All I did was found the opposite of my x coordinates. So I do want to see you writing down all of these points for your homework. I know it's a little bit of work, but this is what my expectations are for this lesson. And then step number 3, plot your new points. Plot new points. Okay, so my new points are right here, highlighted in the orange. Let me plot my new points. Let me use orange again. So 2 comma 5 would be right about here. So this is p prime. 1 comma negative 1. This is q prime. 4 comma positive 2. That is r prime. S prime is 4 comma positive 4. Here is my new figure, and I'm reflecting across the y-axis, and looks pretty accurate to me. All right. So remember, if I'm ever going too quickly, right, feel free to pause this video, rewatch it if you have any questions, okay? And actually on your own, why don't you work on 2A, B, and C? I want you to draw this figure, so plot these points on both of these graphs, okay? And then in here, you could do A here, B here. Find a reflection across x-axis for A, y-axis for B, and then I want you to answer this question. Are the images in parts A and B congruent, right? If you don't remember what congruent means, look it up in your notes, and I want you to explain why, okay? After you do that, I want you to fill out your level of understanding, okay? And then work on your homework, which is Big Ideas Math 2.3. We do have a skill check the next day, so make sure you do your homework well. I want to challenge you to get a 70% or higher on all of the homework. I know you can. So push through. If you're struggling with it, it's okay. If you need help, reach out to me and we'll go over questions on the next day. Okay? Good luck. Fill out your level of understanding and work on it on your own first. If you have any questions, let me know. Bye, everyone.